So we started discussing the four archetypes, the four primary archetypes of human consciousness. And I have to stress that it's human consciousness, because we don't actually have any evidence that it applies, for example, to animals. So this is just about human beings. Carl Jung did this work specifically in terms of the ocean of consciousness that he said connects all human beings. Inner child, when we talked about it last week and we did the meditation, we talked about what kind of inner child you are, and we talked about the variety, and then we went through memories about being a child that would then give you an indication of what agreements or self-determinations you have established at a cellular memory level and unconsciously or subconsciously in your mind. When it comes to the other three archetypes, however, there isn't a variety of victims. There isn't a variety of saboteurs, and there certainly isn't a variety of prostitutes. They're just one solid archetype with a variety of experiences through which we engage with them and learn whether or not we're living the shadow side or the light side of those archetypes. So when we work with the inner child, we're doing specialist work that speaks to our conditioning and to a great extent determines to what extent we entrench being a victim or being a saboteur or being a prostitute in our lives. So when we talk about being a prostitute, we are talking about living a life of transactional analysis, where every aspect of our being is in fact connected to a price. And the price may not actually be money, it may be approval, it may be love, it may be inclusion, belonging, but everywhere we go we have to check for ourselves what is the exchange that we are engaging in. This is very difficult work from a mindfulness perspective because we are always in a state of exchange. We're exchanging energy all the time. And the way energy works in terms of the spiritual laws and the physical laws of the universe is that when a high vibrational energy comes into a space of a low vibrational energy, they will work to meet each other halfway. So the high vibrational energy transmits into raising a low vibrational energy. What gets in the way of that happening easily and naturally is mind, ego mind, that is determined to be right or to be perfect or to be what it is or unwilling to change its information. And this is why we have a process of learning that shifts people's consciousness and awareness and understanding. So when we're playing what we call transactional games, very often we have to stop and check, how are we thinking about something? If we're always thinking, what's in it for me? Then we are playing a transactional game of the prostitute. And these are all shadow prostitutes behaviors. If we're thinking, first and foremost, what will it cost me? So what's in it for me, meaning what will I gain? What will it cost me, meaning what price will I have to pay for it? Then we're playing the prostitute game. And these two questions come up regardless of the experience. They don't come up just when we're shopping. They come up when we have somebody who asks for a favor. They come up when we're offering to do somebody a favor, or we're thinking twice before we offer to do somebody a favor. So every step of the way, in the old Piscean age, especially since the Industrial Revolution, we were taught this. The feudal system in history taught us this. Slavery has taught us this, that everything comes at a price. And so we are trained, conditioned to think, even of ourselves, as having a price. Now my quote of the week in terms of what's going on in South Africa at the moment is Praveen Gordon saying, our souls are not for sale. And that struck a chord. Because that's the one thing that nobody can sell. We can sell our bodies into slavery. We can even sell our minds into slavery or pay other people to enslave our minds, which is what we do when we're sitting around watching television or glued to these screens or living the unaware life. So when the masses are listening to the politicians talk their rhetoric and they buy into it and they don't question it, well, here we are, selling our minds, or rather paying people to have control of our minds. In fact, the world we live in now is so very clever that we have to pay people to keep us in zombie-like status. And we enjoy paying them. We think it's entertaining. This prostitute energy, one of the oldest vocations or professions in the world, applies across the board in a whole range of relationships, including partnership relationship. So each and every one of us has an obligation to check where are we engaging in our own little game of prostitution. Quid quo pro. All of these little phrases that enter into our discussions and conversations and determine whether or not we're living the law of mutuality or the law of giving and receiving, or in fact, the law of abundance. The reason prostitution or the prostitute comes up as an archetype across human consciousness is that ever since man started exchanging resources and exchanging time and energy for resources and commodities, we have placed a price on man's talents, on his skills, on what he owns or what he grows or what he has to share. Where before different people with different skills and different talents would combine their energies for mutual harmony, we shifted into a space of competition and comparison. And we are living that so gloriously right now that we can't ever pretend to not know how decimating it is of humanity, of kindness, of trust, of grace, of love, of all of those things that actually make our lives abundant. And unfortunately for all of us, we must take responsibility for our contribution, because not one of us has outgrown it completely, and we live it. I mean, you pay to come to meditation, so even I have not outgrown it. And I will tell myself that I am forced to charge for meditation, because how else will I pay for the roof over my head or all of the other bills that go with it? And I call it survival. So that fact of having gotten into the system and now maintaining the place in the system and charging others in order to maintain my place in the system makes me a prostitute along with everybody else. Gee, thanks. I was like, so lovely. So we can't ever rationalize that we're not that. That it is a very common part of our human consciousness. What we can do is see to what extent we are living it, and whether or not we can shift into the light side of the prostitute. And the light side of the prostitute is a person who recognizes that their value is in fact priceless, that you can't buy their loyalty, that you can't buy their silence, that you can't buy their cooperation or coerce them into cooperation because you have something on them. You can't create a transactional relationship with their value system. And that's what we need to start looking at in terms of being willing to stop the behaviors that make us less, and to reject the behaviors in others that make us less. So I am always frustrated by the people who are afraid of confrontation. And I'm always saying confrontation and conflict are not the same thing. So I can understand if people don't want to get into conflict. But to not confront something inside of yourself and to not be willing to confront it outside of yourself in your experience is in fact to play the prostitute, and inevitably from there to become a victim of exactly that issue because you're not cleaning it up somewhere. So we see that all of the archetypes are connected to each other, that a recurring pattern of allowing and accepting and settling in one archetype leads to the rise and the entrenchment of another. Nothing is disconnected in the universe. And unless we are willing to stop and ask ourselves, what are we afraid of? What prevents us from getting into the conflict? Is it an unwillingness to speak? It is an unwillingness to lose our jobs. Is it an unwillingness to lose our popularity? If it is an unwillingness to lose something outside of you, it's prostitution. Plain and simple. And this doesn't make you a bad person. It's just a way of acknowledging that you too are part of the mass consciousness that we are working at changing in spiritual learning. learning and spiritual growth and in meditation and all of the other classes I teach. So for months we've been talking about becoming a spiritual warrior and how being that, inside out, is of value in the world. And these are the places that we start to shift things. Even if it's one little shift, where somebody is consistently mean to you and you say, okay, enough now, stop. I will not settle for that disrespect anymore. I will not allow it. And you confront the bully, or you confront the disrespect, and you put your foot down about it. I mean, a lot of people are afraid of what the retaliation will be, of more dire consequences coming their way. And all that does is spiral us deeper and deeper and deeper into fear, and deeper and deeper and deeper into apathy. And of course, we all know that evil thrives where good men do nothing. Whatever is experienced by you as an external pressure or oppression will be experienced by others. You are never alone in that. This is the nature of anything that prostitutes others, that it is never singling one person out. It never just focuses on one person. If anybody is creating an attitude or feeling or beingness or doingness of prostitution in your life, you can guarantee that that person is doing it to others. And sometimes it takes one little voice to say no, enough. Then that then gives courage to other little voices to say no, enough. And we're seeing it. Thankfully, we are at a time in our history where we can see it and ask ourselves how good it feels to be part of a group that's saying, no, we've had enough. I mean, I'm watching people all over South Africa, and I'm listening to people all over South Africa being empowered by each other and being inspired by each other. And it's demonstrating for me how one little no somewhere can have a ripple effect and empower us, take us outside of prostitution and outside of being the victim and outside of being self-sabotaging into actually becoming whole again. So I am very inspired by the events of the week, and I am looking forward to a long and arduous, gradual healing process that actually unites us as South Africans. So it feels as if South Africa has been taking a long walk to freedom for 25 years now, and like Mandela, we might have 2 more years to go before we can say we are no longer trapped or that we haven't become Robben Island, but it's worth it, I think. It's worth the energy and it's worth the effort. Nobody can sell your soul. I, the soul, am in fact priceless. The energy of who I am lives beyond my physical body. Every breath I take is given for nothing. Everything that I require, essentially require for survival, is given for nothing. There is no price placed on all of that. So all of these archetypes exist only in the duality. They do not apply to soul consciousness. Soul consciousness doesn't even think in terms of price or cost. And I remember there's a very obscure speech by Martin Luther King where he was talking about martyrdom and whether or not, he had a dream that he was willing to die for. And some journalist asked him if he was willing to be a martyr for everything he was standing up for. And he said, when you die on the side of truth, only in the world do you call it martyrdom. Only here do we call it martyrdom. In God's eyes, it is you being you. It is normal. It is who we are. We are born from it and we live it and we return to it. So in God's eyes, there's no such thing as martyrdom. Only in the eyes of man do we create this as a sacrifice, as a possibility of loss even, and then it comes out right back to the prostitute where we say, okay, what am I bargaining for and what am I bargaining with in order to keep my comfort zone or this life as I know it intact? Unfortunately, history has shown us that the more people don't stand up for the truth, and the more they don't stand up and sell out on themselves and they betray themselves, the heftier the price gets in the long term. The more burdensome the mass consciousness becomes. And of course, the price is then paid by bigger and bigger and bigger communities because nothing is being done. And we're seeing that here in our own country. So today's meditation is about going into your own prostitute consciousness and asking yourself, what is your price? Where is your boundary? What is the intolerable for you? Where do you stop and say, okay, not for that? I remember, this was a Demi Moore movie with Robert Redford. Was it Robert Redford or somebody other?
She slept with a millionaire.
Yes, where he offered her $1 million, offered her and her husband, right? I mean, the fabulous movie about prostitution. And if you ask yourself that, would I sleep with a stranger for $1 million? I mean, okay, Fatima's quick answer would be no. You can see her whole energy system is going hell no. And probably yours would as well. And so would mine and Maris's, and definitely Clyde's. And I know Charmaine and Shahina are going to go hell no. So we in the room would go hell no. But if he said $10 million? See, now I'm not sure if you just have an aversion to sleeping with somebody or if it's just the terms of the agreement. But this is the thing. We can keep moving the price.
Dollars or rands?
Dollars. We're talking dollars. We're talking dollars. We're always talking dollars. We can even talk pounds if you like. We can even talk pounds. But the basic, the consensus is that everybody has their price. Everybody has their price. And that understanding lives inside of us. We've grown up with it. It's part of our conditioning. So the question is, what is your price? What is your price? And it might be something huge, out of this world, but that's your price. And establishing it so that you can see that you have established your sense of yourself, your value between this and that. On the other hand, if you are running around on this plane and biting your tongue and being nice to truly shitty people because you want them to like you, well, your price is worth less than 2 cents. So don't even consider this question. You see how I'm talking the extremes? When we place the price on a tangible, then everybody is very good at saying, not even for $10 million. Unless, of course, it manifested in a case right in front of you, and you could pick it up and walk out with it and say, okay, now I've sold my soul. And then on the flip side of that, the intangibles. The intangibles are where we sell out on ourselves all the time. We might be completely aggravated and totally frustrated and outraged by our president selling this country down the drain, which he has done, but we must be even more outraged that we are not so very different. Do not give, oh dear God, Zuma and I are one. Remember that one? Zuma and I are one. We cannot be so outraged at him if we are not equally outraged at ourselves. We have to stop and check. He has sold us out for money, and he is giving his loyalty in a space that sells this whole country down the line. So we must check, where are our loyalties? Where are we biting our tongues? Where we are letting things settle? Where are we not challenging? Or where are we deliberately, consciously turning a blind eye as if we do not know and truly as if we do not care, and therefore selling somebody or something out? It's a heavy question, and it is a heavy burden for any soul to bear if you consider that the nature of soul is that I am priceless. Jean-Paul Sartre said man is born free and is everywhere in chains, and one of those chains is his price. So there is a price tag on every one of us, and it is time to remove it. If yours is a sticker and we need to get methylated spirits and rub it out for the next 6 years, that works for me too. Let's rub it out. In the way of the universe, nothing is asked of you other than you live in harmony with the universe itself. And when you're living according to a price tag, then you are not in accord with yourself, and therefore you are not in accord with the universe. Of course, what we know for certain is that there is always going to be that spectrum. So the price that one sets on oneself is going to range anywhere in the chakra system, from base chakra, which is survival mechanism price, all the way to spirituality in the 8th chakra, in your soul self chakra, which speaks to the price that I pay to be spiritual, the price that I pay to be avant-garde, the price that I pay to hold my philosophies. Every level, with every chakra, there is a price tag attached. And once you've moved past each of the human ones, you get to a space where you understand that living your truth takes the price of not belonging in what you call mainstream any philosophy or attitude towards life. So it's a different sort of independence, different sort of sustainability or self-sufficiency that is then demanded of those who want to move higher and higher and higher in the process of enlightenment and let go of the price tag. But even there is a price tag. For as long as you want something from anything, anybody, even the universe, there is a price to be paid for it, and you are the one who is carrying the tag. You are the one who has to sacrifice, and you are the one who has to do the work. So let's all figure out, what is your price today? Where is your price tag sitting? How are we going to do that? I like it when I get told we are doing these things and I have no idea how.